Okay, everybody, we're going to get started with reading a little bit about Faces of Autism. I'm just going to show you a little bit of the inside of the book. And just so you know, like this cover, these are all the pictures that are in the book. And I actually photographed the pictures to create this cover, which was kind of crazy. I had to shoot it a few different times on a few different tables and lighting, and to try not get glare, and to try and get all the faces in there and get them just right. This was not like digitally manipulated. I shot this as is, and then my graphic designer created this beautiful cover and the beautiful artwork to go along with it. So that's a little behind the scenes inside scoop on how that was created. The dedication is, I don't know if you can see, dedicated to all the children with autism, because that's where my heart really lies with this book. This was published 3 years ago now in 2017. I don't know how many of you maybe were at the launch party. It was crazy busy and awesome. And I'm sorry if I forget if you were there or not there, because there was like 300 people there. It was insane. So I loved it. It was one of my favorite days of my life, and just really a lot of pride in that. So here's all the kids in the book. And we're going to go through and read one by one. And I'll be honest, like this is kind of weird for me because, yeah, I wrote the book. And I had spent like 2 years producing this. The first year was spent photographing all of the families and working with them and kind of building that content and deciding on the trajectory of, you know, how the book was going to be laid out and what the message was and how that was going to work. And I didn't really know what I was doing, so it was kind of a trial and error. And then the writing part was a lot harder for me. I knew what I wanted to showcase, but sometimes it was hard to put that into words. And so I wrote and rewrote this introduction probably 4 times because that was the hardest part, because it was the most personal for me. And I have not read this book since it's been published. I know that's silly, but I spent so much time writing and rewriting and, you know, going through it many times with my editor and getting it just right. So it's not like I don't know what it says, but when it was published, it was such a relief to have it out into the world, and it was such a crazy whirlwind time that I have not sat down and read it. So this is kind of for me as much as it is for you. So bear with me if I kind of trip over some things, but the introduction is going to be kind of the longest, but we'll start with that. So, all right, I knew my youngest son, Alex, had issues. He was 2, and something was off about his emerging language skills. He was vocalizing, but it was mostly a lot of prompted reading, and he wasn't effectively communicating, not even gesturing for simple wants and needs. He also didn't want much to do with the people around him, not his brothers, not his dad, not even me. And the tantrums, to say that they were excessive would be an understatement. I knew something wasn't right. And yet I couldn't face the word that kept flitting through my mind, even though I tried desperately to suppress it: autism. I couldn't even say the word above a whisper, because what I knew of autism at the time was scary to me. It was daunting, it was limiting, it was forever. And Alex was only a toddler at the time. Those were dark days, and I struggled to get through a day peacefully. I knew he needed help, and yet I was afraid of what that would mean. I felt helpless and hopeless, and I didn't want to face that it was autism. I was in denial. I vividly recall a conversation with his early childhood teacher who called me at home to gently tell me he thought he should be evaluated for autism. That was a tongue twister. Immediately, my mama bear defenses kicked in, and I thought, how dare she? He's not autistic, he's just quirky. And all these thoughts began running through my mind. My heart was racing, and I could feel an angry flush come over me. I quickly ended that conversation before I said something I regretted and stormed into my husband's office, where I collapsed into the ugly cry because I knew she was right, and I wasn't sure I could face what that meant. Once I calmed down and took a breath, I realized Alex was the same little boy with the smile that lit up his whole face, and I loved him with all my heart. So drawing from a well of patience and determination I didn't know I was capable of, I got to work. I went into research mode, as parents often do when their child needs help. I began concentrated efforts to improve his communication skills at home. I started telling others my concerns quietly at first as I settled into this new reality. I asked questions, and I looked for the best places to get him the help he needed. I fiercely believed that there was more for him than the worst case scenarios that were running amok in my brain. At almost 4 years old, Alex began attending an early intervention therapy center 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, year round. The first day that I dropped him off, I got him to my car, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, I felt a tremendous wave of relief from the helplessness and hopelessness. Alex immediately began making progress on things I thought would take years to accomplish. He was doing simple but monumental things like brushing his teeth, using his imagination when he played with his toys, and calling me mom. These were things that I took for granted with my older two sons. I spent a lot of time waiting in the lobby at drop-off and pickup, and I started to notice the children at the center making significant progress too. And this was amazing to me. Did anyone else see this? Why didn't I know kids with autism could make this kind of progress? I wanted the world to know about these remarkable children. As a photographer, my favorite subjects are children. I love their innocence, their raw emotions, their delightful spirits. I felt compelled to photograph these children with autism in particular and tell their stories. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was a calling to me. Fast forward a few years, and I'm thrilled to have brought forth this book. I've been around and worked with children with autism almost my entire photography career. I actually began my business when I was pregnant with Alex, which I wouldn't recommend starting a business when you're pregnant with your third child, just saying. Alex says, I didn't know at the time that autism would become a part of our lives or even a part of my professional life. Alex has introduced me to a world I knew nothing about. He's opened my eyes and my heart. As children often do, he's taught me so much about myself, about love, about this beautiful, messy thing we call life. And as of the writing of this book, Alex is about to enter middle school, and right now he's in high school. His elementary years have been filled with ups and downs, but I'm so proud of him. He has school friends, he has a great sense of humor, and teachers who love him. He's phased out of needing speech therapy, and he can carry on reciprocal conversation and cracks jokes all the time. He's been a student council representative and is an active Boy Scout. In fact, he's spending his first week away from home at camp while I'm writing this. It's nerve-wracking to me, but I'm grateful he's learning important life skills and becoming independent, which is funny to me because he's been camping now often and has done that overnight week-long camp by himself several times, and he's even attended a leadership camp. So he's becoming a leader within Boy Scouts too, which is pretty cool. So it's kind of fun for me to read this. All right. I'm grateful for the lessons autism has taught me: to be present, to celebrate the little milestones, and to believe more in a person's capabilities than their disabilities. With Faces of Autism, I hope to change the way we look at autism. An autism diagnosis can be difficult, but there is beauty and magic in those with autism. As I introduce you to the 31 children in this book, I want you to know that there is more to them than the difficulties that they face. If you are new to autism, I applaud you for picking up this book. If you're seeking how to help your loved one, and likely you've done a ton of research already, there's plenty of books to tell you the ins and outs and difficulties, theories, therapies, facts, data, statistics, and all about how hard autism is. It's exhausting. This isn't that kind of book. Don't get me wrong, autism is hard. It's so hard. It's throughout the parenting manual because it's in a foreign language hard. This lifelong journey is incredibly challenging, not only for the individual with autism, but their families as well. And if I can just take a minute, because I recognize that we are all in a really challenging time. Everybody is, but those families with kids with special needs have really been on my heart lately. And I imagine in some ways it might be easier to kind of be homebound and not have to navigate the world right now. And yet it's disruptive and their schedules are upside down and you're on top of each other, and hopefully you're healthy, but if you're not and dealing with that sort of thing, it's scary. And adding on this whole another layer of challenge, I'm just thinking of you and that it's, I'm recognizing that challenge for you. So hang in there. Okay. So we need therapies, techniques, theories, facts, and data in order to help those with autism become their best selves. We need to support families and honor the challenges of raising a child with autism. Yes, autism is intense, and it's uncomfortable to those not familiar with this intensity. The easy thing to do is to look away or dismiss someone with autism as not having much to contribute, or worse, to even pity those with autism. No one benefits from pity. There is no doubt that autism is hard, but in the space of this book, I want to focus on the joyful, light-filled, beautiful souls of these children. I want to change the conversation we have about autism. We've done a great job in recent history to raise awareness of autism, and we're moving towards autism acceptance, which is that step in the right direction. However, acceptance implies tolerance, and who wants to be simply tolerated? No. I want this book to take it to the next level, autism admiration. What would happen if we were to value autism as a strength? What would happen if we allowed those with autism the space for their development to proceed at its own pace, for their ideas to be considered, for their strengths to be flourishing, for their life challenges to be supported? What gifts would they bestow on the world? What if our education systems were elevated to make creative, active, experiential learning the norm? Couldn't this shift benefit all students and be far more inclusive of those with autism? When people with ASD are allowed to foster their creativity and ideas, the world is a better place. Innovators such as Albert Einstein, Mozart, Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Thomas Jefferson, and Michelangelo all made significant impact on our world with their life's work. And all are suspected to have been on the autism spectrum. So who in our midst right now might be the next great artist, poet, inventor, or scientist? Who are we dismissing if we don't value the children today who have an autism diagnosis? In this book, you might be meeting the next philosopher, environmentalist, comedian, mayor, author, fashion designer, pianist, animation engineer, teacher, sports writer, innovator, or civil rights advocate. The parents of children with autism already know how remarkable their children are, and we want the world to know it too. Chances are, if you're holding this book or listening, you know someone with autism. Maybe it's your neighbor, friend, or coworker's child who has some form of autism. You want to understand, but you aren't sure how to start that conversation. You want to help, but you aren't sure how. Or perhaps you're one of the many support people, teachers, therapists, grandparents, and other family members who make a daily impact on those with autism. You see the struggles, but you also see the light in these children. Or most likely you are a parent to a child with autism, and this book spoke to you because you know there is more to your child than his or her diagnosis. I have the unique vantage point of being a parent to a child with autism, and I'm also an observer of autism through the lens of my camera. As a photographer, I'm invited into people's lives, quickly developing a rapport, allowing them to be their authentic selves in order to create a compelling portrait. I have had the privilege of interacting with and getting to know with families intimately, even if for a very brief amount of time. It's given me a unique perspective, and I have experienced and witnessed this deep, unconditional love and immense pride that go along with being a parent to a child with autism. Whether you are at the start of your autism journey or a well-seasoned traveler on the autism road, I have a special message for you if you're a parent of a child with autism. I see you. I see the endless things you do for your child. I see the appointments and questions and relentless research you do to get the best possible help for your child. I see the patience and the fierce love that you have for your children. I see the pain and the frustration and the tenacity that you have. I see your hope and your pure joy. I see the quiet way you keep on going even when you're utterly exhausted, because who else will do it? I see the tremendous impact you have on your child. It's a long road, but you are persevering. You are making the biggest difference in your child's life by loving them unconditionally. It's working, and I see it. I see you. And with the quiet nod of understanding that only a fellow autism parent can make, I say to you, keep up the good work. In this book, you'll hear from other autism parents who are eager to share their words of wisdom. Almost every one of them has a similar message. Don't stop believing in your child. Be patient. Life with autism is a marathon, not a sprint. And sometimes it's more like a slow hike across the Pacific Crest Trail barefoot. The best thing you can do is to love your child for who they are. I'm so excited to introduce you to the children in this book. You will meet amazing kids through whom you will see autism in a new light. First and foremost, they are children. They play, they laugh, they learn, they love. Some are very verbal and some are not. Many will strike you as typical little boys and girls with autism challenges lurking below the surface. Some are severely affected and have trouble relating to the world around them. But like everyone, they all have gifts. Autism covers a wide range of abilities and difficulties, and each child with autism has an inner light that shines brightly. Every time I encounter a child with autism, I am invited to be present and acutely aware of my surroundings. I can't help but see the world, not just through my camera lens, but through the lens of their wonder and ultrasensory view. Entering their world takes patience and an open mind, to be sure, but when you do, it is so rewarding. During my photo sessions, I've marveled at the sound of the wind with a keenly attuned boy. I've played chase more times than I can count, and I've had many, many magical moments. I've been inspired by insightful words of wisdom from minds too young to know such things, and I've marveled at joy and creativity. I've experienced so much affection, from a gentle touch of my arm to a quiet grip on my hand as we walked into giant bear hugs. I've witnessed deep empathy and unbounded love. The beauty of using photography as a medium for a project like this is that it removes the distractions of autism. Had I used video as the means to tell their stories, you might have only paid attention to the stilted speech, the hand flapping, impulsivity, or slower verbal processing. And then perhaps you might have missed out on the inner beauty of the child. With still photography, a moment in time can capture the full underlying beauty and emotion of each child. Photography allows you to see, truly see, the soul within. As a photographer, my life's purpose is to reveal beauty. Let me show you the inner beauty of these children. Let me show you they are magic.